Hey guys, and welcome to my gaming journal, where we examine both old and new video games in the format of a daily journal. For this episode, we examined The Last of Us Part 2 and see how long it took for me to beat it. And spoiler warning, please enjoy. Dear Journal, so the game starts off with Joel telling his brother Tommy of the events what just happened in the last game. You then play as Joel for a minute and then run into Ellie. He then starts to play the guitar, which is a nice feature in this game. And the recurring theme is a song by Pearl Jam called Future Days, with the first opening lyrics, "If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself." We then see a time skip 4 years later, and you start to play as Ellie. Things seem to be peaceful. They live in a village where everybody knows everyone, and things seem to be happy in this bleak world. You start to meet new characters such as Jesse and obviously then Dina, who is Ellie's girlfriend. The game then takes a turn, and then after playing Ellie for a little bit, you play as this new character named Abby with her own group of friends. You start running from a horde of infected, which definitely feels more like Days Gone in terms of the gameplay there. Joel shows up for the first time in the post 4 years time skip, and him and Tommy save you, and you start fighting off infected. And then we get to the biggest turn in the game, where we find out that the person they've been looking for is Joel, in which they proceed to torture him. And Ellie gets word Joel's in trouble. She doesn't hesitate to go. She tries to find him. She does. Unfortunately, she is too late to save him, and Abby kills Joel, setting up the events of the game. Ellie's in full revenge mode. She is looking for Abby. And you are not alone on this trip. Dina does tag along as basically the Ellie from the last game. Instead of chapters, it is divided up Seattle days. In Seattle Day 1, it is definitely encouraged when playing this game to explore every detail. There are so many things to find if you go to other buildings, rather than just follow the story. You will find Easter eggs, you will find extra cutscenes, you will find resources such as ammo. The threat level has also gone up since The Last of Us. With this game, not only are there more types of infected, there are now several type of groups out there that have their own agenda. One thing I do appreciate about this game is showing LGBTQ characters. Obviously Ellie and Dina. They're just showing them as a couple. It's not a big deal. And showing that they're in love. And they're just trying to get by in this bleak world. As far as gameplay goes, obviously if you played the first one, you know exactly what to expect. But one thing that has definitely improved are the graphics. I'm amazed by the facial animations when you are performing a stealth kill on someone. As the game progresses, we find out more about the story that Dina is now pregnant, and Jesse is the father. After escaping the horde of infected, Ellie and Dina find a theater, which will basically be the hub for Ellie. But before we can get into that, we are introduced into a flashback, which is 1 year after the first game. Joel and Ellie are just out and about to celebrate Ellie's birthday. They go to a museum, and it's one of the finest parts of the game as far as introducing a bit of light in a dark world. You know, you can put a hat on a dinosaur and just the space sequence in general. You can tell Joel is trying to be the best dad he can be for Ellie. Back to the present, we are now in Seattle Day 2, and this is probably one of the more controversial parts of the game, where dogs are now part of the enemy, and unfortunately, you basically have to kill them. I don't feel bad about killing certain characters, but I do feel bad when killing dogs. This game also introduces a bunch of fake outs. Just when you think you're safe, such as upgrading your weapons, you are attacked all of a sudden from behind. So always be on your toes. We then go back to a second flashback. It is now 2 years later. You're with Tommy and Joel this time around. And the relationship with Joel is a bit strained compared to what it was a year prior. And Ellie tries to call him out what happened with the Fireflies. And Joel, of course, tiptoes around it. He doesn't confess. And that fuels Ellie. Dear Journal, fun fact, when recording for this episode, I realized that this was going to be more than 15 minutes, and YouTube doesn't allow for videos longer than 15 minutes. For this half of the video, we are going to blaze through it just for the sake of time. Get ready for The Last of Us Part 2, Kai Edition. Ellie continues to torture and it affects her mental state. The Vita survives. Third flashback. Joel tells the truth and Ellie wants nothing to do with him moving forward. Seattle Day 3. Jesse shows up. Ellie kills more of Abby's friends, including a dog and a pregnant woman. Ellie reunites with Tommy. Abby finds Ellie and kills Jesse. Plot twist, you get to play as Abby for a good portion of the game now. You find out Abby wants revenge on Joel because... Seattle Day 1. Abby's perspective. Abby works with the Washington Liberation Front led by Jeffrey Wright, and he wants to go to war with the Seraphites. The Seraphites are a crazed religious cult. Meanwhile, we learn more about Abby. Abby's in a bit of a love triangle.
Mel's pregnant.
Oh. Okay.
It's not just that, though.
Should I say congrats?
After that, you get kidnapped by some Seraphites. Just as you're about to get tortured and hung, you get saved by two new characters, Lev and Yara. Backstory, Lev and Yara are actually Seraphites as well, but they were banished because Lev is actually a trans man, and they do not allow people to identify as trans in their cult. The boat gameplay in this sucks. I do wish there were also more silent takedowns, like in the Arkham games. Side note, stalkers suck. They are the worst. They come at you from the wall just when you think they're dead, and they also are smart enough to run away if they think they're losing. We then see some very creative set pieces. We fight a boss that should have been in Resident Evil, and then we get into some pretty heavy stuff. Lev wants to go rescue his mom, even though his mom has already disowned him for being trans. Yara thinks it's a bad idea. Lev goes anyway. Abby and Yara then have to go rescue Lev. While you're trying to rescue Lev, Washington Liberation Front and the Seraphites are fighting, and you're just trying to survive. You find Lev, and he has confessed that he had to kill his mother out of self-defense. Jeffrey Wright shows up, wants to kill Abby for working with Seraphites. Yara saves Abby by killing Jeffrey Wright, but also sacrifices herself in the process, which we then see even more running from Abby and Lev. And just when things couldn't get worse for Abby, she finds out her other friends are dead from Ellie, including her dog. Back to the present, Abby chases Ellie, and you start to fight Ellie. I feel really conflicted right now because who am I supposed to root for? Abby then decides to let Ellie and Dina go. We then see a time skip. Everything seems fine. Ellie is living on a farm with Dina and they have a baby together. And cut to credits, we're done. Only we're not done because this is not the end of the game yet. Tommy gives her a lead where Abby is and Dina is pissed. Ellie decides to abandon her family in order to implement her revenge. Cut to Abby and Lev, and they are looking for more fireflies. They get kidnapped by rattlers, worst gang name ever, and turn them into slaves. Months pass. Ellie finds Abby and Lev on some pillars, and we have ourselves a final boss fight. Once again, I feel really conflicted about this, don't know who to root for. Ellie loses 2 fingers and decides to let Abby go. We see one final flashback between Joel and Ellie right before his death, and the healing process begins between the two. One last time skip, Ellie returns home and Dina has left. Ellie goes to play her guitar, only she realizes she can't because of her injury. She leaves the guitar at the farm. Cut to credits, we're done. Overall, I really enjoyed this game. It's a lot to take in, and there are a few nitpicks, mainly the boat gameplay, and the fact that there's just not enough stealth takedowns. But, that being said, great writing, amazing performances, and most of all, it was ambitious and it took risks. And because of that, I am giving this a 96%. Now, tune in next time when we examine Ghost of Tsushima. See you then.